In a world that glorifies action and busyness, we often forget the quiet power of reflection. What if the secret to true greatness lies not in how much we do, but in the balance between thought and service? Fulton Sheen's profound message invites us to explore the lives of Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, Pope John III, and Dag Hammarskjöld, figures who found greatness by first contemplating deeply and then acting boldly. Join me as we uncover how this delicate dance between contemplation and action can lead to a life of lasting impact and purpose.
The dance of contemplation and action, Fulton Sheen's path to true greatness. In a world that often glorifies busyness and activity, it is easy to overlook the profound impact that stillness and reflection can have on our lives. We are bombarded with the message that to be successful, we must always be moving, achieving, and progressing. But as we rush forward, are we missing the essence of what it truly means to live a life of meaning and purpose? Fulton Sheen, in his timeless wisdom, invites us to pause and consider a different approach. What if true greatness doesn't lie in constant action, but in the delicate balance between reflection and service? What if the secret to a fulfilled life is found in the rhythm of contemplation and action? In his sermon, Sheen presents a compelling argument that the path to sainthood and true greatness is paved with both contemplation and action. He doesn't just suggest that we alternate between the two. He insists that they must be deeply intertwined, each feeding and sustaining the other. Without contemplation, action is aimless. Without action, contemplation becomes stagnant. Sheen's insights, drawn from the lives of four remarkable figures, Mahatma Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, Pope John III, and Dag Hammarskjöld, offer a roadmap for anyone seeking to live a life of purpose and impact. The World Divided, the Go-Go and the Come-Come Sheen, begins by contrasting two groups that exist in the modern world: the Go-Go group and the Come-Come group. The Go-Go individuals are constantly on the move, immersed in action, driven by the external demands of the world around them. They are the ones who believe that success is measured by how much they accomplish, how many tasks they complete, and how fast they move. But in their relentless pursuit of achievement, they often fail to pause, reflect, or find deeper meaning in their actions. They are in motion, but without purpose. On the other side, the Come-Come group represents those who withdraw from the world, seeking refuge in contemplation. They believe that wisdom and insight come from deep reflection, prayer, and meditation. Yet while they may possess great ideas, they remain disconnected from the world, unable to bring their insights into action. They are rich in thought, but poor in deeds. Sheen's message is clear. Neither group, on its own, can achieve true greatness. It is only when the two are brought together, when contemplation fuels action and action is guided by reflection, that we can lead lives of deep significance. This is the balance that Christ modeled in his life, first inviting his followers to come to him for inspiration, and then commanding them to go into the world to serve. The call to greatness lies in the harmony between stillness and movement, thought and action. Gandhi, nonviolence begins within. One of the most powerful examples of this balance can be found in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. To the world, Gandhi is known as the great leader of nonviolence, a man who fought for the independence of India through peaceful resistance. But Sheen peels back the layers of Gandhi's public life to reveal the deep inner work that preceded his activism. Gandhi's commitment to nonviolence toward others began with a fierce discipline of nonviolence toward himself. Before Gandhi could lead a movement, he had to master his own desires, ego, and impulses. He embraced fasting and celibacy, believing that self-mastery was the foundation for mastering the world's injustices. Gandhi's greatness did not come from grand speeches or public demonstrations alone. It came from the quiet, personal battles he fought within himself. He believed that if he could conquer his own selfishness, he could inspire others to overcome theirs. In this way, Gandhi's contemplation of the Sermon on the Mount became the fuel for his lifelong activism. He lived the truth that to change the world, one must first change oneself. Through Gandhi's life, Sheen teaches us that action without inner transformation is hollow. True nonviolence, and indeed true leadership, must begin with the self. Only when we have confronted our own weaknesses and desires can we hope to lead others with authenticity and integrity. John F. Kennedy, The Hidden Strength of Silent Suffering. While Gandhi's life demonstrates the power of self-mastery, John F. Kennedy's story offers a different lesson about the balance between contemplation and action. Kennedy's public persona was one of charisma, confidence, and leadership. He is remembered for his bold vision and his ability to inspire a generation. But Sheen reminds us that beneath Kennedy's polished exterior lay a man who suffered deeply and silently. Kennedy's life was marked by physical pain, a result of injuries sustained during his military service. This pain, which he bore in silence, became an occult cross that he carried throughout his life. It was something he rarely spoke about, yet it shaped him in profound ways. Sheen argues that this hidden suffering was a source of strength for Kennedy, purifying his character and deepening his wisdom. Pain, Sheen suggests, is a great teacher. It strips away superficiality, ego, and selfishness, leaving behind a more refined and empathetic soul. Kennedy's pain was not just a burden, it was a gift that made him a better leader. Sheen likens pain to the tightening of violin strings. Just as the strings must be tightened to produce beautiful music, so too must we endure suffering to become our best selves. Through Kennedy's example, Sheen challenges us to view our own struggles not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. Suffering, when embraced with courage and grace, can lead us to greater wisdom and deeper understanding. Pope John III, The Simplicity of Love. In the life of Pope John III, Sheen finds yet another example of the balance between contemplation and action. Known for his warmth, humility, and sense of humor, Pope John embodied the idea that love for God must lead to love for humanity. His greatness was not found in intellectual brilliance or theological complexity, but in his simple, heartfelt love for others. Sheen highlights that Pope John's love for the world flowed from his deep contemplation of God's love. It was this connection with the divine that gave him the strength to open the Church to the modern world through the Second Vatican Council. Pope John's contemplation of God's infinite love translated into tangible acts of kindness and openness toward all people. His life teaches us that the most profound actions often come from the simplest motivations: love of God and love of neighbor. Pope John's sense of humor, his ability to laugh at himself, and his deep humility were all rooted in his understanding that life, when lived in love, becomes uncomplicated and full of joy. Through his example, Sheen reminds us that greatness is not always found in grand gestures or complex ideas. It can be found in the simple, everyday acts of kindness that flow from a heart filled with love. Dag Hammarskjöld, The Hidden Power of Interiority. The final figure Sheen discusses is Dag Hammarskjöld, the former Secretary General of the United Nations. Hammarskjöld's life was marked by a profound sense of interiority, a quiet inner strength that few people knew about. Unlike the other figures Sheen discusses, Hammarskjöld's greatness was not visible to the world. It was hidden in his deep spiritual life and personal sacrifices. Hammarskjöld's commitment to peace was rooted in his contemplation of Christ's suffering. He saw his own life as a reflection of the life of Christ, marked by unjust accusations and quiet endurance. His decision to remain chaste, his devotion to Scripture, and his willingness to give his life for the cause of peace all stemmed from this deep interior life. Hammarskjöld's greatness was not in what he did, but in who he became through his inner sacrifices. Through Hammarskjöld's life, Sheen teaches us that true power comes from within. It is not always the loudest or most visible leaders who have the greatest impact. Sometimes the most profound contributions come from those who live quietly, rooted in deep spiritual conviction. Greatness is not always public. It can be hidden in the quiet depths of a soul dedicated to God. The dance of reflection and service. Throughout Sheen's sermon, one theme remains constant. The balance between contemplation and action is essential for true greatness. Each of the figures he discusses, Gandhi, Kennedy, Pope John, and Hammarskjöld, began with deep reflection, whether through prayer, suffering, or love. It was this contemplation that gave them the strength, clarity, and purpose to act in ways that changed the world. Sheen warns that without contemplation, action becomes mere busyness, a flurry of activity without direction or meaning. But when action is rooted in reflection, it becomes powerful and transformative. To truly make a difference, we must first seek wisdom and inspiration from within before we turn outward to serve others. The ultimate path to greatness, love in action. In the end, Sheen's message is one of love and service. Whether it is Gandhi's self-discipline, Kennedy's silent suffering, Pope John's love for humanity, or Hammarskjöld's quiet interiority, each of these figures exemplifies the idea that true greatness is found in giving of oneself for the sake of others. They each came to contemplate and then went into the world to act. Sheen's sermon calls us to follow their example, to balance our lives between reflection and action, and to root everything we do in love. Love is the force that drives us to serve, and service is the expression of that love. By cultivating both, we can lead lives of meaning and purpose, making a lasting impact on the world around us. Conclusion: the harmony of stillness and movement. Fulton Sheen's reflections on contemplation and action remind us that greatness is not achieved through action alone, nor through contemplation in isolation. It is the union of the two, reflection and service, that creates a life of true significance. As we look to the examples of Gandhi, Kennedy, Pope John, and Hammarskjöld, we see that each of them took time to contemplate, and it was from this place of inner strength that they went forth to change the world. Sheen's message is clear. If we seek to make a difference, we must first look within. Through contemplation, we find the wisdom and inspiration needed to act. Through action, we express the love and service that flow from our reflections. In this balance, we discover the true path to greatness, a path that is open to all who are willing to both come and go.
In a world full of seriousness and tension, laughter seems to have been forgotten. But what if I told you that laughter is not just a fleeting emotion, but a bridge between the human and the divine? Fulton J. Sheen, a man of profound wisdom, believed that humor has the power to reveal our greatest truths. Join me as we explore Sheen's unique insights into why laughter is more than just a reaction. It's a reflection of our spiritual journey. Let's dive into the joy, the wit, and the deeper meaning behind every smile and laugh.
The nature of humor. Fulton J. Sheen's exploration of humor goes beyond a simple appreciation for jokes or lightheartedness. He delves into the very essence of what makes something funny, and in doing so, reveals a profound truth about the human condition. Sheen begins by noting that humor is born from a slight degradation of dignity. This is a crucial point. Humor arises not when dignity is completely destroyed, but when it's gently nudged or tipped off balance. Consider the image of a bishop, solemn and dignified, walking with his mitre, the tall, pointed hat worn during religious ceremonies. The mitre, a symbol of authority and spiritual leadership, carries a weight of respect. But now imagine it worn slightly askew, tipping to one side. This subtle imperfection makes us laugh, not because it mocks the bishop, but because it humanizes him. The same person who represents the divine on earth is momentarily brought down to our level. In this small, harmless deviation from perfection, we find humor. It's not that the bishop's dignity is destroyed. Far from it. His role and stature remain intact, but the slight disruption of the expected order creates a space for laughter. Sheen argues that this is where humor thrives, in the gaps between expectation and reality, between the divine and the human. Humor, then, is not simply a frivolous escape from reality. It is a reflection of our dual nature. As humans, we belong to two worlds, the material and the spiritual. We are both creatures of the earth and reflections of the divine. When we laugh, we are acknowledging the tension between these two aspects of our existence. We laugh at the small imperfections, the moments when our higher aspirations collide with our earthly limitations. Sheen's insight into humor teaches us that laughter is a way of embracing our humanity. It allows us to accept our flaws and weaknesses without losing sight of our dignity. In fact, it is in these very moments of imperfection that we find our greatest humanity. Laughter, then, is not just a reaction, it is a way of understanding the world and our place in it. Humor as a unique gift to humanity. Sheen's reflections on humor also touch on something deeply significant, the fact that laughter is uniquely human. Animals may amuse us when they mimic human behavior, but they do not possess the ability to laugh in the same way that we do. This ability to laugh, Sheen suggests, is a reflection of our dual nature as beings who exist between the earthly and the divine. Take, for example, the story Sheen tells about his dog. He trained the dog to put its head between its paws and pray, remaining in this position until Sheen said, "Amen." This scene is funny because the dog, an animal, is performing a human action. But beyond the humor, there's a deeper truth here. We laugh because we recognize ourselves in the dog's behavior. The dog is mimicking something distinctly human, and in that mimicry, we find humor. But why, Sheen asks, does laughter only begin with humans? The answer, he explains, lies in the fact that humans are the only creatures who inhabit both the earthly and the divine realms. Animals exist solely in the material world, driven by instinct and survival. Angels and other divine beings exist purely in the spiritual realm, untouched by the limitations of the physical world. But humans are different. We belong to both worlds, and it is this duality that gives rise to laughter. Humor, in this sense, becomes a bridge between the material and the spiritual. It allows us to step back from the seriousness of life and see the world from a higher perspective. When we laugh, we are acknowledging the limitations of our earthly existence, while also recognizing the greater reality beyond it. This is why laughter is so powerful. It connects us to our higher nature while grounding us in our humanity. In Sheen's view, laughter is not just a way to cope with life's challenges. It is a way to transcend them. Through humor, we can see the world with clearer eyes, recognizing both its beauty and its absurdity. And in doing so, we come closer to understanding the divine. And society's loss of humor. One of the most striking points in Sheen's analysis of humor is his observation that society has lost its ability to laugh at itself. In the past, satire was a vital part of culture. It allowed people to poke fun at the absurdities of life, to lighten the mood and relieve tension. But today, Sheen argues, satire has been largely replaced by a kind of grim seriousness. According to Sheen, this shift is a result of society becoming overly sensitive and politically correct. In our desire not to offend, we have lost the ability to laugh at ourselves and at the world around us. Sheen notes that jokes about ethnicity, religion, or even general human behavior have become taboo. Where once we could laugh at the quirks and contradictions of human nature, we now fear saying anything that might be seen as inappropriate. This cultural shift, Sheen suggests, is not without consequence. When we lose the ability to laugh at ourselves, we lose a vital aspect of our humanity. Satire, in its true form, is not meant to degrade or insult. It is meant to point out the absurdities and contradictions in life, allowing us to see the world with a lighter heart. Without satire, we risk becoming too rigid, too focused on our own importance, and too serious. Sheen's reflections on satire offer a valuable lesson for today's world. In a society that often feels divided and polarized, humor can serve as a unifying force. It allows us to step back from our differences and see the common humanity that binds us together. Laughter, in this sense, becomes a way to bridge the gaps between people, offering a moment of shared understanding. By reclaiming the ability to laugh at ourselves, Sheen argues, we can find a way to navigate the complexities of modern life with grace and humility. Humor, far from being a trivial distraction, is a powerful tool for healing and connection. Humor as a reflection of the divine. Perhaps one of the most profound points in Sheen's discussion of humor is his assertion that laughter is deeply connected to the divine. In Sheen's view, humor is not just a human reaction. It is a reflection of our connection to God. Humans, created in the image of God, carry within them a spark of the divine. But at the same time, we are also creatures of the earth, bound by physical limitations and imperfections. It is in the tension between these two realities that humor finds its place. Sheen explains that laughter arises when we see the gap between our higher calling and our earthly existence. When we laugh at ourselves, we are acknowledging our imperfections without losing sight of our divine potential. This kind of laughter is not mocking or degrading, it is liberating. It allows us to see ourselves as we truly are, flawed but capable of greatness. In this sense, humor becomes a way of transcending our earthly limitations. It allows us to view our struggles with a lighter heart, recognizing that there is something greater at work in the universe. Laughter, then, is not just a way to cope with life's challenges. It is a way to rise above them. This insight offers a deeper understanding of why humor is so important in spiritual life. It allows us to see the divine through the lens of the human, to find moments of grace in the midst of our imperfections. By laughing at ourselves, we are not denying our flaws. We are embracing them as part of the journey toward spiritual growth. Sheen's reflections on humor and the divine offer a powerful reminder that laughter is not just for moments of joy. It is a way of finding light in the darkness, of seeing the world through a lens of hope and grace. The contrast of gloom and laughter. Sheen's description of the modern world as being steeped in gloom is a sobering one. He paints a picture of a culture obsessed with darkness, from literature to music to art. Even young people, he notes, are caught up in this wave of melancholy, singing songs about heartbreak and death at an age when they should be full of life and joy. But Sheen doesn't stop at diagnosing the problem. He offers a solution: laughter. In a world filled with gloom, laughter becomes a vital antidote. It lifts us out of the darkness and reminds us that there is still joy to be found, even in the midst of life's challenges. Laughter, Sheen argues, is not a denial of the world's problems. It is a way of confronting them with courage and grace. By finding humor in the small things, we are able to maintain perspective, to see the bigger picture. Life, with all its trials and tribulations, is still something to be enjoyed. Sheen's vision of humor as a counterbalance to gloom is a powerful reminder of the importance of maintaining perspective. In a world that often feels heavy and overwhelming, laughter offers a moment of relief, a way to reconnect with the joy and beauty that still exist. God's laughter. In one of the most thought-provoking moments of his talk, Sheen reveals that even God laughs. He points to passages in Scripture where God is said to laugh, particularly at the notion that humans might declare him dead. This divine laughter, Sheen suggests, is not one of mockery, but of understanding. It is the laughter of a parent watching their child struggle with something they will one day understand. God's laughter, in this sense, is a reminder of the limits of human understanding. No matter how far we stray from faith, God's presence remains. His laughter, Sheen suggests, is a reflection of his patience and love for us. It is a sign that, despite our confusion and mistakes, we are always moving toward a greater truth. This moment in Sheen's talk offers a profound insight into the nature of divine love. God's laughter is not a rejection of humanity. It is an affirmation of our potential. It is a reminder that no matter how lost we may feel, we are never beyond the reach of his grace.
Fulton J. Sheen's reflections on humor offer a powerful and uplifting message for a world that often feels heavy and serious. He reminds us that laughter is not just a way to escape from life's challenges, but a way to embrace them. Through humor, we are able to see ourselves more clearly, to acknowledge our imperfections without losing sight of our potential. In a world that can often feel overwhelming, Sheen's words offer a reminder that laughter is a gift, a way to connect with both our humanity and our divinity. It is through laughter that we find the strength to carry on, the grace to navigate life's challenges, and the joy to celebrate its beauty. In a world consumed by chaos and distraction, we often forget the most profound truth, that love, no matter how distant it seems, never stops pursuing us. Fulton J. Sheen, a master of words and wisdom, takes us on an unforgettable journey through the life of Francis Thompson, a man who tried to escape his fate, only to be relentlessly chased by God's love. This is a story of despair, redemption, and the power of love to save us, even in the darkest moments. Join me as we unravel Sheen's profound insights and discover how divine love can transform even the most broken souls.
In today's fast-paced and complex world, we often find ourselves overwhelmed by the demands of life. Whether it's the constant pressure to succeed, the weight of responsibility, or the anxiety of an uncertain future, the desire to escape reality is something many of us have experienced. Fulton Sheen draws on this universal human experience, reflecting on how people throughout history have sought ways to numb their consciousness, to flee from the burdens of life. Sheen introduces the tragic figure of Francis Thompson, a young man of great intellect and potential, who fell victim to this very impulse. At the age of 17, Thompson was already feeling the strain of life's expectations. Having been told he wasn't suited for the priesthood and finding no fulfillment in his pursuit of medicine, Thompson began to drift. His refuge became literature, and it was a book, Confessions of an Opium Eater by Thomas de Quincey, that led him down a path of addiction and despair. Sheen's retelling of this story is not just about a single man's fall from grace, but a reflection of how many of us look for ways to escape. For Thompson, the opium offered a temporary relief from the disappointment and confusion he felt in his life. But Sheen reminds us that these fleeting escapes come at a great cost. Thompson's life, once full of promise, spiraled into darkness as he sought to avoid the responsibilities of consciousness. This theme is incredibly relevant today. In a world where distractions are endless, whether it's through technology, substances, or even overworking ourselves, we can easily lose sight of what truly matters. Sheen's message is clear. Running from our problems may provide temporary relief, but it never leads to lasting peace. Like Thompson, we may find that the escape we seek only deepens our suffering. Life is often shaped not by grand, dramatic moments, but by the small, seemingly insignificant decisions we make along the way. Fulton Sheen reflects on how these tiny choices can alter the course of our lives in ways we never expect. He reminds us of the story shared by Jean Quitau, a member of the French Academy, who was imprisoned during World War II. In the quiet moments of captivity, Quitau and his fellow prisoners passed the time by telling the stories of how their parents met. What stood out in these stories was how random and trivial the circumstances were. A chance encounter, a misplaced letter, a wrong address. These small moments, unnoticed at the time, became the foundation for entire lives. They led to marriages, families, and ultimately to these men sitting together as prisoners under a totalitarian regime. The thread that connected them all was woven from the smallest, most accidental events. Sheen uses this story as a metaphor for the ways in which our own lives are shaped. Francis Thompson's descent into addiction didn't happen overnight. It began with a single, well-meaning gesture, a gift from his mother. She gave him De Quincey's Confessions of an Opium Eater, unaware of the influence it would have on her son's life. For Thompson, that book sparked a curiosity that led him down a path of drug addiction and homelessness. What seemed like an innocent moment became a turning point in his life. This idea that our lives are shaped by small decisions resonates deeply. How often do we make choices, not realizing their potential impact? The people we meet, the books we read, the seemingly insignificant moments, all of these can alter the trajectory of our lives. Sheen urges us to be mindful of these moments, to recognize that even the smallest decisions can have profound consequences. One of the most powerful elements of Sheen's sermon is his reflection on the redemptive power of love, particularly when it comes from the most unexpected places. In the case of Frances Thompson, it was a woman of the streets who became his lifeline during his darkest days. Sheen paints a vivid picture of this moment, describing Thompson as a man who had lost everything: his health, his dignity, his hope. He wandered the streets of London, emaciated and broken, finding small jobs to survive. In this state, he encountered a woman whose kindness would leave an indelible mark on his soul. This woman, whom Sheen poetically describes as a spring flower fallen from the coronet of spring, cared for Thompson when no one else would. She gave him food, shelter, and companionship, even though she herself lived a life on the margins of society. In her, Thompson found not just physical sustenance, but a sense of humanity that had been stripped away by his addiction. Sheen's retelling of this relationship is filled with deep empathy and compassion. He doesn't present the woman as a savior in the traditional sense, but as a fellow human being who, despite her own struggles, was able to offer love and support. This act of kindness, though small, was enough to keep Thompson alive during a time when he had nothing else to hold on to. This theme of unexpected redemption is central to Sheen's message. Love, he reminds us, can come from the most unlikely places. It doesn't matter who delivers it or how it's given. What matters is that love, in its purest form, has the power to save. Thompson's story is a testament to the fact that even in our darkest moments, love can find us. It may come from a stranger, a fleeting encounter, or someone we least expect, but when it does, it has the power to change everything. One of the most profound elements of Frances Thompson's life was his relationship with God, a relationship he often tried to escape. Sheen explores this through Thompson's famous poem, The Hound of Heaven, which describes a man fleeing from the relentless pursuit of God's love. The imagery of the poem is powerful. God, like a hound on the hunt, chases the poet through the dark alleys and corners of his life, refusing to let him go. Sheen's interpretation of this poem offers a deep reflection on the nature of divine love. Thompson, like so many of us, believed that he could outrun God. He sought solace in addiction, in the fleeting pleasures of the world, thinking that he could escape the responsibilities and pain of his existence. But no matter how far he ran, no matter how deeply he sank into despair, God's love continued to pursue him. This pursuit, Sheen explains, is not one of punishment or judgment, but of unconditional love. God, like the hound in Thompson's poem, chases us because he wants to bring us back to him. It is not enough for God to stand by and watch as we lose ourselves. His love compels him to seek us out, to follow us even into the darkest corners of our lives. Sheen's exploration of the Hound of Heaven speaks to a universal truth. We often run from the very thing we need most. Whether it's out of fear, shame, or a desire for control, we push away the love that could save us. But Sheen reminds us that no matter how far we go, God's love will never stop pursuing us. It is relentless, patient, and ever-present, waiting for the moment when we finally stop running and allow ourselves to be found. One of the most heart-wrenching moments in Sheen's sermon is his recounting of Frances Thompson's near-suicide. After years of addiction, poverty, and hopelessness, Thompson saw no way out. He had saved enough money to buy the opium that would end his life, and he prepared to take the fatal dose. It seemed like the only escape from the pain and suffering that had consumed him. But in that moment of ultimate despair, something extraordinary happened. Thompson felt a hand, gentle yet firm, on his own, stopping him from taking the final dose of opium. Sheen draws on this moment as a symbol of divine intervention, a reminder that even in our darkest hours, there is always hope. The hand that stopped Thompson, he believed, belonged to Chatterton, a poet who had lived a century before him. Whether it was Chatterton or a manifestation of something greater, this moment saved Thompson's life. Sheen uses this story to illustrate the struggle between despair and hope that many of us face. When life becomes overwhelming, it can feel like there is no way out, no possibility of redemption. But Sheen reminds us that even when we feel utterly alone, there is always a presence watching over us, guiding us back from the brink. This presence may come in the form of a friend, a stranger, or a mysterious hand that stops us in our tracks, but it is always there, offering us a way back to the light. This part of Sheen's sermon is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. No matter how lost we feel, no matter how deep our despair, there is always hope. Thompson's life, which could have ended in tragedy that night, was instead given a second chance, a chance to find redemption, love, and ultimately peace. As Sheen reflects on the final years of Francis Thompson's life, he emphasizes the central theme of love, both human and divine, as the key to salvation. After years of suffering and isolation, Thompson finally found solace in the simple, innocent love of a child. Sheen tells the story of a little girl named Daisy, whom Thompson encountered during his time at Storrington Abbey. Daisy's small acts of kindness, a smile, a gift of raspberries, became a source of comfort and healing for Thompson. Sheen beautifully captures the delicate balance between joy and sorrow that comes with love. Thompson's heart, which had been hardened by years of pain, began to soften in the presence of this child's pure love. But even as he experienced the sweetness of this connection, Thompson was acutely aware of the pain that love often brings. Love is the ambassador of loss, Sheen quotes Thompson, expressing the fear that accompanies deep love, the fear of losing what we hold dear. In Sheen's view, love is both the greatest gift and the greatest challenge we face. It opens us up to the possibility of deep connection, but it also exposes us to the risk of loss. Yet, despite this fear, love remains the key to salvation. It is through love that we find redemption, healing, and ultimately peace. For Thompson, love, whether it came from a woman on the streets, a child's innocent smile, or the unwavering pursuit of God, was the force that pulled him out of the darkness and led him toward the light. Sheen's sermon ends with a powerful reminder that love is the thread that binds us to the divine. It is the force that connects us to one another and to God. In love, we find not only the strength to carry on, but the promise of something greater, something eternal.
As we reach the end of this journey, one truth remains clear. No matter how far we run, love will always find us. Fulton Sheen's words remind us that even in the darkest corners of our lives, God's love never ceases its pursuit. It's in these moments of vulnerability that we often find the greatest redemption. Whether through the kindness of strangers, the innocence of a child, or a mysterious hand pulling us back from the brink, we are never alone. So, as we go forward, let's remember Sheen's powerful message. Love is not just a many-splendored thing. It is the force that holds us together and leads us home. Until next time, may you walk in that light and never stop believing in the power of love.
Monsignor Sterline and brother priests and revered sisters and all friends in Christ. Do you realize that if you are consistent in this mission, you will be exposed to 12 talks? And I should tell you that they will all be different. I will not be like the professor who traveled around the country in a car and with chauffeur. And the chauffeur always sat in the audience. One day the chauffeur said to him, "You know, I think that I have heard that lecture of yours 1,000 times. And I could give it just as well as you do." The professor said, "All right, you give the lecture tonight. I will dress up in your chauffeur's uniform and sit in the audience." The chauffeur gave a perfect lecture. But at the end, a hand went up. There's a question that I should like to ask you. When you mix that H2SO4 with an NaCl2 and then compare it with the photographic plates of the sun, how do you get the equation E equals m over c squared? He said, "That's the most stupid question that I ever heard in my life. And to show you how stupid it is, I'm going to ask my chauffeur to answer it." The subject of this evening's meditation will be choice. I will try to bring home to you the supreme alternatives that are before us. The alternatives of our eternal destiny. And I will begin by giving you two examples of choice. Because after all, our heaven or hell is before us every day. But there come great moments too when we make decisions for much of our life. And one of these stories will be taken from Paris and the other from London. And both of them were my own experiences. I had gone down from Brussels to Paris to preach a sermon on the second Sunday of February. And I stayed in a small hotel. There was an Englishman playing the piano in an adjoining room and playing it well. I complimented him, and then I asked him if he would like to go out for dinner. He said, "I've never talked to a priest before in my life." Well, we're just like anyone else. You stick me with a pin, I will jump too. So we sat down at a table in this small restaurant, and he said, "Do you ever have questions to answer? This is my problem. I have never met in my life one good man or one good woman." I thanked him for the compliment, and then he went on. He said, "Now this coming 11th of February, over there at that table, there was a lady trying to break a lump of sugar in a cup of coffee. She couldn't do it, so I went over and broke the lump for her. And she told me how mean her husband was to her. I asked her to come to live with me. Well, she did, and I get tired of them all after about 12 months. So he said this morning, I bundled up all of her clothes. I left them with the concierge, but she anticipated my move, and she gave me this note. Dear puppy, if you refuse to continue living with me until our anniversary, the 11th of February, I shall commit suicide by throwing myself into the Seine. Now may I permit her to live with me to prevent suicide? I said, no, you may not do evil that good may come from it, and furthermore, she will not commit suicide. It got to be about 11 o'clock at night. He said, I will walk you back to the hotel. I'm not going to the hotel. I'm going to Montmartre. He said, I was just beginning to think that maybe you were all right. And now you tell me you're going up to that hellhole. Well, I said, there's something else in the hill of Montmartre besides dives. There's a great basilica there, the Basilica of the Sacred Heart. And every night for over 50 years, there are 1,000 men in prayer, all night long. I induced him to come with me. He said, how long? I said, I will leave when you are ready to leave, though I intend to stay all night. He made no move to go until the sun came up over Paris and I read Mass. And walking down the hill of Montmartre, he said, will you stay in Paris and teach me to be good? It's the first time in my life I've ever contacted goodness. I agreed to meet him that night in his courtyard at 8 o'clock. He came in with a woman, not the one that was involved in the story. And he said, we will go out to dinner, the three of us. And I said, no, this is not a social evening. You must make a choice. Either you are going out with that woman, or you are going out with me. He walked up and down the courtyard a couple of times and came back and said, "Well, Father, I think that I'll go out with her." And that's the end of the story. The choice was made after having received a great grace. Please God, before he dies, he will recall that night at Montmartre. That was the choice for evil. Another kind of choice. I spent about 7 or 8 years of my life in all in a parish in London, in the Soho Square district. I opened the church door this particular morning. It was a cold January morning, heavy London fog, and a limp figure fell in, a young woman. I said, "How did you happen to be here?" "Where am I, Father?" I said, "Oh, Father?" "Yes." She said, "I used to be a Catholic, but not anymore." "You were drunk?" "Yes," she said, "I was drunk." Well, I said, men drink because they like the stuff. Women drink because they don't like something else. What were you running away from? She said, 3 men. I was in love with each of them and they were beginning to find it out. And so I got drunk. "What is your name?" And pointing to a billboard opposite the church on the walls of the Cross and Blackwell Jam office, I said, "Is that your picture over there?" "Yes, I'm leading lady in that musical comedy." I made a cup of coffee for her, for she was frozen from the night exposure. She said, "Thanks." I said, "No, come back this afternoon and thank me." She said, "I will on one condition, that you do not ask me to go to confession." I said, "Very well, I shall not ask you to go to confession." She said, "I want you to promise me faithfully that you will not ask me to go to confession." I said, "I promise you faithfully that I will not ask you to go to confession." She came back that afternoon before matinee, and I said, "We have 2 paintings in this church that are very notable. Would you like to see them?" As I took her down the side aisle of the church, I pushed her into a confessional. I always keep my promises. 2 years later, I gave her veil as a nun in the convent of Adoration, where she is to this very hour. So that cold January morning, another choice had to be made, and it was a choice for good. And this is the choice that each and every one of us is making. Now let me read you about the 2 choices. One from the Old Testament and the other from the New. Incidentally, I will always be reading from the New English Bible. The New English Bible, which is by all odds the most beautiful of the texts. God speaks. "I offer you the choice of life or death, blessing or curse. Choose life, and then you and your descendants will live. Love the Lord your God, obey him, and hold fast to him. Or else, if you choose evil, you will be cursed." Now from the New Testament. from Matthew. It is remotely possible that I have missed my reference, but I know I have it here. I get so nervous when I miss anything. Our Lord and Savior is speaking. Enter by the narrow gate. The gate is wide that leads to perdition, and there is plenty of room on the road, and many go that way. But the gate that leads to life is small and the road is narrow, and those who find it are few. This was much more intelligible in the days when the city was surrounded by walls. There was the great gate that opened up into the highway, and the very narrow gate and narrow road that led into separate houses. So our Lord is saying there's a broad road with a wide gate, and many travel that road. There's a narrow road and a narrow gate, and few there are who go in. Now suppose it be said, but I will not make a choice. I will live indifferently. Not to make a choice is to choose. No boy, for example, ever decides in life that he's going to be ignorant. He just doesn't study. No one ever decides that he is going to be a dishonest criminal. He just does not practice honesty. White fences do not remain white fences, they become black fences because we do not paint them and take care of them. Naturalists tell us that the mole, which burrows in the ground, once had eyes to see, but he chose not to use those eyes. And nature, as if seated in judgment, said, "Take the talent away." There is an animal called the crustacea in one of the caves of Kentucky. This seemingly has perfect eyes. If you cut the eye with a scalpel, you find all of the nerves desiccated. It chose the darkness, and the penalty was the loss of vision. So everybody is making a choice, even when they do not choose. Now, what are some of these choices? How are they pictured? Well, first of all, I think the choice that is offered us is something like the choice that was offered on the sunlit portico of Pontius Pilate the day that he brought our blessed Lord and Barabbas out before the mob. Now, our blessed Lord had the bloody sweat the night before. He was scourged. He was made king for a day. When I visited Jerusalem, I noticed on the walls of the floor of the Praetorium of Pilate, for example, a big letter B, beta, Greek letter, then the Roman numeral 12, and then other numbers. These carvings and the great rocks in the Praetorium of Pilate were a game the soldiers played, king for a day. The B meant Basilius in Greek, king. If the dice would fall in that B, he was king for a day. Now when our blessed Lord was brought down into that Praetorium, they mocked him, they put on a crown of thorns, they gave him a reed, they put on a purple robe, and they bowed before him mockingly as their king and their Lord. Now Pilate brings him out on his sunlit portico, and with him Barabbas, a great popular hero. Let us remember that. He was not just a robber, as has been described. He was rather a revolutionist. And there was reason for revolution in Jerusalem because the Jews were under the servitude of the Romans. He was anti-establishment. He was popular because he was violent. He tried to overthrow the Roman authority. And Pilate now brings out on the court these two figures. There is even some evidence in the early manuscripts of Scripture that the name of Barabbas, but Barabbar means in Hebrew son. Rabbas is rabbi. So he was the son of the Father. Pilate, therefore, was really saying, which shall I release to you, Jesus, the Son of the Heavenly Father, or the Son of the Father, Barabbas? They chose Barabbas. Release unto us Barabbas. What shall I do with your Christ? Crucify him. Now we have that choice. We are in many important moments of our life making that decision. We are opting for the hero, or we are opting for the one who for the moment is quite unpopular. Or to put it in other scriptural language, we are going to one of two cities. St. Augustine of the 4th century wrote a book called The City of God, in which he contrasted it with the city of evil. Now, in the last book of Scripture, which is the book of Revelation, there are two cities that are described. This is, I think, one of the most apropos books of modern times. It's very, very difficult to understand, and there are many things in it which we'll never understand until it's too late, really. But there are two cities. One is the city of Babylon, and the other is the city of Jerusalem. Not the Babylon, the historical Babylon, but the Babylon that is yet to come, the corrupt city of evil. And this is the way John describes it. Then one of the 7 angels that held the 7 bowls came and spoke to me and said, "Come, and I will show you the judgment on the great whore enthroned above the ocean. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and on the wine of her fornication men all over the world have made themselves drunk. In spirit he carried me away into the wilds, and there I saw a woman mounted on a scarlet beast, which was covered with blasphemous names. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and gold and jewels and pearls. In her hand she held a gold cup, full of obscenities and the foulness of her fornication. And written on her forehead was a name with a secret meaning: Babylon the Great, the mother of whores and every obscenity on the earth." The woman I saw was drunk with the blood of God's people and with the blood of those who had borne their testimony to Jesus. That is one city. Then the other city, which will be at the end of time. Come and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. Who's the Lamb? Our blessed Lord. Who is the wife or the bride of the Lamb? The church. All of us will be members in heaven one of another. So in spirit he carried me away to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city of Jerusalem, coming down from out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God. It had the radiance of some priceless jewel, like jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great wall with 12 gates at which were 12 angels, and on the gates were inscribed the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. So ultimately, at the end of our choice, after having chosen either Christ or Barabbas, there will be two cities awaiting us. The city of Babylon and the great marriage. For in heaven there will be the marriage of the Lamb and the bride, which is the church. Now let us look at a few characters who have made this choice. St. Augustine. St. Augustine was the hippie of the early church. He was a very learned man, dissolute, but he still had a yearning to be good. And he often prayed, "Dear Lord, I want to be good, but not now. A little later on." We all say that prayer. And one day he was with his friend Alypius in a garden, and he was torn on the inside between following the way of the Spirit and following the way of the flesh. And he heard a voice, the voice of a child, saying, "Tole, lege, take up the book and read." And he read from the Epistle of the Romans, not in chamberings and in impurities, but in obedience to the Spirit. And Augustine chose that day to follow Christ and became one of the great saints of the church. Even pagans had this choice. Five or 6 centuries before Christ was the great teacher of antiquity, Socrates. And he was constantly telling the youth of Athens that there was an absolute in morality, and there was one God, not many. And that was a crime against the state. Socrates was condemned to death. And they offered him a chance to escape because of his influence and his prestige and his goodness. And Socrates would not escape. And they gave him the hemlock juice. And he drank it. And as he was losing consciousness, he said, "Oh yes, I owe a rooster to Asclepius." Refusing to escape, he said, "I shall follow whatever way God leads me." So even the pagans have the choice. An interesting story from the Old Testament. There was a famine in the city of Bethlehem. And Ruth left the city of Bethlehem, or rather the town of Bethlehem, and went into the Moab country. Now that was non-Jewish. And she should not have done it even during a famine. And she took with her her 2 sons. They married 2 Moabite women. The 2 sons died. Naomi had 2 daughters-in-law in her hand. One was Ruth, and the other was Orphe. And Naomi said, I'm going back again to my own land. Now choose what you will do. Ruth said, your God shall be my God. Your country shall be my country. Your Lord, my Lord. I shall go with you. Orphe went back to her pagan people. Ruth became the great-grandmother of King David, who was the notable king who foretold the kingship of our blessed Lord. So at the beginning, therefore, of these series of conferences, think on the choice that you are making. Never be discouraged. You have plenty of help. We will develop that as time goes on. And perhaps I can describe maybe some of the difficulties that we have and the hopes in terms of some of the great sculpture of Michelangelo. Michelangelo was commissioned to do the tomb of Julius II. This tomb was never finished. What you see in Florence today are 4 half-formed figures coming out of the marble, struggling, striving to be released. That is a picture of ourselves. We know this choice is before us. We're striving. The flesh weighs upon us, old habits, weakness of will. But like these characters, we hope for an upsurge from all that is cold and inert. The second statue, the statue of King David. A sculptor in Florence tried to make a statue, and he ruined it. But it was a beautiful piece of Carrara marble. One day Michelangelo passed by and saw that marble, asked that it be brought to his studio, applied his genius, his inspiration, and his skill, and brought out of it the immortal statue of David. And so though our lives have been spoiled, though they may have been hacked and ruined by circumstances or other artists, the great finger and hand of God can mold us into immortality. And finally, the Pietà. Here was a young woman, having seen her divine Son crucified, and then taken down and put in her lap as a kind of a drained chalice. And yet she's not broken with grief. There's not sadness. There is peace. There is resignation to God's will. An interior calm. For she sees that sacrifice was part of the divine message to her Son and to herself. And as we struggle to overcome all of the alien influences that there are in the world, those we will talk about too, as we struggle to overcome them. We're never to be cast down by trials, by discipline, by mortification. We have God with us. Christ is in our souls. You're good people. You would not be here if you were not good. And even though you're not as good as you would want to be, you have come here because you want to be better. There's a deep yearning today in the American soul for goodness and spirituality. And you manifest it. And if you bear with me during these talks, I will lead you step by step to inner peace, to inner joy and consolation. Thank you, and God love you. You heard the title of this telecast. It was sort of inspired by something that happened to me when I was 6 years old. I was just beginning to be an altar boy. And the pastor called me up to the altar. They were cleaning the church. And he said, come. So I went up to the altar and he gave me a great big missal. It's a Latin book that we use during Mass. And he said, go now to the back of the church and then into the rectory with this book. Well, it was very heavy for a 6-year-old boy, and it was a long aisle. So as I got toward the end of the aisle, I began running, afraid I wouldn't make it. And there was coming into the church a woman with a basket with bundles. One bundle I remember was potatoes. And I bumped into her, knocked her over, the potatoes, I fell over, and I fell in front of the big Latin book. And she said, why don't you read comic books like the other boys? Well, that was my introduction to Come, Come, Go, Go. You could never guess what it's about. I will merely begin by saying that the world is rather divided into two groups of people today. There is what might be called the go-go group, and then there's the come-come group. The go-go group is the new breed. The come-come is the old breed. The go-go demand that we go into the world. We live in a secular universe. We must serve it. Come group is come apart. Get away from the world. It's wicked. Go-go's God is dead. The world is wicked and evil. This is the group that believes in the pendulum without the clock. And this is the clock without the pendulum. This is the flowing waters without a bed to the river. This is the bed with no waters in it. It would be wonderful if we could ever get the two groups together. And they should be together. Because when we go back to the life of our blessed Lord, we find that the first words of his public life were, come. Come to me. And the last words of his public life were go. Go into the world. Come first to get an idea. Strength, inspiration, motivation. Then action, dynamism, fluidity, serving the secular world. This is the way the two should be kept together. When they are kept together, what do you find? I think you get modern saints. I'm going to talk about modern saints, not plaster saints, not canonized saints. I'm just looking at the clock to see how much time I can give each saint. I've got 15 minutes, 4 saints. That'll be less than 4 minutes for each saint. I'm not going to have much time. So this will be the quickest life of the saint that you ever heard about in your life. First, Gandhi. The great inspiration of Gandhi's life was nonviolence to others with violence to self. He said, after reading the Sermon on the Mount, as far as that is concerned, I am a Christian. He believes that one of the reasons people make war against others is because they've never been made war against themselves. So before he preached nonviolence, he was violent against everything in himself that leaned toward egotism and selfishness. When Gandhi was 37 years of age, he took the vow of celibacy. And he kept it until his death. And he said, I felt that any particular human love that I might have in marriage would narrow me, and I wanted to love all of mankind. And then another form of violence, fasting. Gandhi wrote better about fasting than I think any man in our contemporary world. He related prayer and fasting. Prayer, he said, attaches us to God, but fasting detaches us from creatures. And then he gave a new concept to fasting. He said, fasting has great influence on those whom we love. He said it will not have a great effect on tyrants, but it will on others. He wanted, first of all, by his fasting, to share in the hunger and the misery of his own people. And the only way that he could do this was by feeling within himself the gnawing pangs of hunger. And after he had conquered himself, then he began preaching nonviolence to others. And for what reason? For the sake of freeing the untouchable. Those people of India that were ignored, one was not even to touch them. And he fasted to free them. And that Gandhi did. These are our saints. The men who came first to God and then went. It does not require much time to make us a saint. It requires only much love.
Bishop Sheen was a pioneer in Christian broadcasting. He produced thousands of radio shows and appeared on countless television programs. When he received television's Emmy Award, Bishop Sheen said, "Thank God for a good season."
Did you notice that there was no interruption during this entire program? Do you know the only man that hates to be interrupted in the middle of a sentence is a prisoner? And it happens that this is a program in which there's no interruption of a sentence either. Thanks for listening. Pay attention, therefore, to our sponsors. Bye now, and God love you.
Public speaking is an art form, but few have mastered it with the grace, wit, and spiritual depth. Fulton J. Sheen. A man whose words carried the weight of wisdom and the fire of conviction, Sheen captivated audiences not only through his eloquence, but through the authenticity that radiated from his every sentence. What made him stand out was not just his command of language, but his ability to connect deeply with his listeners, transforming speeches into moments of genuine inspiration. In this essay, we dive into the timeless principles that guided Sheen's speaking mastery, uncovering the lessons that continue to resonate in the world of communication today. When standing in front of an audience, many people make a very common mistake. They become different from their true selves. Tone changes, their posture shifts, and they seem to transform into a distant version of themselves in an attempt to deliver a flawless speech. But according to Fulton Sheen, this is the biggest error a speaker can make. For Sheen, public speaking is not about striving for perfection. It's about maintaining naturalness and authenticity. That's where the true power of speech lies. Imagine you are sitting in a hall, listening to a speaker. If that person speaks stiffly, without emotion, would you feel engaged? Most likely, you won't remember much from that speech because it lacks the essential connection with you. Connection that comes from words spoken from the heart, expressed naturally, like a conversation between friends. This is something Sheen understood very well from his early days as a student. Sheen shares that when he was first selected for his college debate team, he was confident in his speaking ability. However, when his coach told him that he was the worst speaker they had ever had, Sheen realized that the ability to think and the ability to convey those thoughts are two completely different things. Sheen had a sharp mind, but his delivery lacked naturalness and felt distant. This became a turning point and the first lesson Sheen learned on his path to becoming an excellent speaker. Naturalness is the key to opening the door to connection with the audience. Why is naturalness so important? Because when you speak naturally, the audience doesn't just hear your words. They feel your presence, your beliefs, your emotions, and the sincerity behind your message. It's as if you're inviting them to embark on a journey with you, where they are not just passive listeners, but active participants. At that moment, you're not just speaking, you're communicating with both your soul and intellect. Fulton Sheen didn't just recognize this, he turned it into a foundational principle of his communication style. Don't change when you step in front of the public. Stay true to your natural self, and the audience will feel everything you intend to convey. One of the standout lessons from Fulton Sheen's approach to public speaking is the importance of thorough preparation. However, what makes Sheen's method truly remarkable is how he transforms that preparation into a source of flexibility and spontaneity. Unlike many speakers who meticulously write out every word of their speech, Sheen took a different approach. He would only jot down key points, and then, in a bold move, tear up his notes, forcing himself to internalize the material and speak from his heart. At first glance, this might seem risky. After all, tearing up your notes might leave you vulnerable to forgetting something important or losing your train of thought. But for Sheen, this was the key to liberating himself from the constraints of a script. By refusing to rely on pre-written words, he trained himself to think on his feet, allowing him to adjust his speech in real time based on the reactions and needs of his audience. This technique didn't just show confidence, it allowed for a more dynamic, engaging presentation, where Sheen could weave in new ideas, respond to the moment, and interact with his listeners in a way that felt authentic and unscripted. The lesson here is clear. True preparation is about mastery, not memorization. When you've truly prepared, when you've immersed yourself in the subject matter, you don't need a script. You become the script. This kind of preparation gives you the freedom to be fluid, to adapt, and to engage in ways that a rigidly planned speech can never allow. Sheen didn't just memorize facts. He created an intellectual atmosphere where ideas flowed naturally, making each talk feel more like a conversation than a formal presentation. Imagine sitting in the audience, watching someone who isn't confined to their notes, but is instead speaking with such depth and understanding that they seem to pull ideas from the air around them. This is the power of true preparation, and it's why Sheen was able to captivate his audience time and time again. He didn't just talk to people, connected with them. drawing from a reservoir of knowledge he had carefully built, and sharing it in a way that felt spontaneous, yet profound. Fulton Sheen's method of tearing up his notes was not a reckless act, but rather a bold statement about the kind of speaker he aspired to be. One who had internalized his message so deeply that it became a part of him. Preparation gave him the confidence to be free and the freedom to be creative, a lesson that any speaker or anyone seeking to communicate effectively can learn from. Sincerity, the bedrock of trust and persuasion. Among all the principles Fulton Sheen emphasized, perhaps none was as important as sincerity. To Sheen, sincerity wasn't just a quality that made a speaker likable, it was the very foundation of effective communication. Without it, a speech, no matter how well prepared or eloquently delivered, falls flat. The audience may hear the words, but they won't feel them. Sheen understood that true connection comes not from mere articulation, from the depth of belief behind the words. In one of his memorable anecdotes, Sheen reflected on the origin of the word sincere. He recounted how, in ancient Rome, craftsmen would sometimes fill imperfections in marble statues with wax to make them appear flawless. However, the most prized statues were labeled sin cera, meaning without wax, perfect and pure in their natural state. Sheen drew a powerful parallel between these statues and public speaking. A sincere speaker is one who is unvarnished, who doesn't try to mask their imperfections or hide behind pretense. They present themselves as they truly are, genuine and honest. But why is sincerity so critical? Sheen believed that audiences have an innate ability to detect when a speaker is being authentic. They may not always remember every fact or detail of a speech. They will remember how the speaker made them feel. And when a speaker's words are backed by genuine belief, that feeling is one of trust. The audience isn't just hearing information, they're being persuaded, emotionally engaged, and led to reflect on what is being said. Consider for a moment what it feels like to listen to someone who speaks from the heart. There's a certain gravitas in their words, a weight that cannot be faked. The audience may not know all the technical details, but they instinctively recognize when the speaker is fully committed to their message. This is the essence of what Sheen preached. Sincerity turns a speech into more than just an exchange of information. It transforms it into a personal experience, one that resonates deeply with the listener. In a world where we are constantly bombarded with noise, speeches, advertisements, and messages that often feel superficial, sincerity cuts through. It reaches us at a core human level. And Sheen knew this well. His speeches weren't just well-rehearsed performances. They were extensions of his beliefs, his values, and his character. When a speaker is sincere, their words carry the undeniable ring of truth. And truth, when spoken with conviction, has the power to change minds and move hearts. Fulton Sheen's lesson on sincerity is timeless. If you want to be a truly effective speaker or communicator of any kind, you must first believe in what you are saying. Authenticity cannot be manufactured. It comes from knowing your message deeply, feeling it genuinely, and delivering it without pretense or artifice. The most powerful speeches are those where the words and the person behind them are inseparable, where the message is a reflection of the speaker's own inner truth. Humor and flexibility, turning adversity into opportunity. Public speaking is often seen as a performance where precision and control are paramount. But Fulton Sheen understood something more profound. The ability to adapt to the unexpected is what sets great speakers apart from the good ones. No matter how well prepared a speaker may be, unplanned moments, whether it's forgetting a line, technical issues, or audience reactions, are inevitable. How a speaker handles these moments can make all the difference. For Sheen, humor and flexibility were not just strategies. They were essential tools in transforming adversity into opportunity. Sheen was no stranger to such unpredictable moments, and one of his most memorable stories is about a speech he gave in Ireland. During that speech, he began reciting a poem that he knew by heart. Halfway through, he forgot the next line. Imagine the pressure, standing in front of an eager audience, mid-speech, and suddenly the words disappear from your memory. Many would have panicked or tried to cover up the mistake. But Sheen, with his characteristic poise, acknowledged the mistake with humor, telling the audience he had forgotten the lines, This candid admission could have been a disaster for a less skilled speaker, but Sheen turned it into a moment of connection. By admitting his human error and injecting humor into the situation, he disarmed the tension in the room. Instead of seeing it as a failure, the audience saw it as a genuine and relatable moment. In that vulnerability, Sheen didn't lose credibility. He gained it. His ability to laugh at himself and carry on showed the audience that he was just like them. Imperfect, confident enough to embrace the imperfection. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Perfection is not required for effective communication. In fact, the imperfections, the unexpected slips, the moments where things don't go as planned, often provide the richest opportunities to connect with the audience. When a speaker can laugh at themselves and maintain composure in the face of mistakes, they become more relatable, more human. The audience isn't just watching a performance anymore. They are witnessing an authentic interaction, one that feels spontaneous and genuine. Humor plays a crucial role in this. Sheen understood that a well-placed joke, especially when it's directed at oneself, has the power to diffuse tension and build rapport. It's a way of saying to the audience, "I'm not here to impress you with my perfection. I'm here to share something real with you." And in those moments, the connection between speaker and listener deepens. The audience doesn't just respect the speaker, they start rooting for them. But beyond humor, flexibility is key. Sheen's ability to roll with the punches, to adapt in real time to whatever challenges arose, was a hallmark of his speaking style. This flexibility came from his deep preparation. Because he didn't rely on memorizing a rigid script, Sheen could pivot easily when something went awry. His talks weren't confined to a strict set of lines. They were dynamic conversations, shaped by the energy in the room and the moment itself. In a world where many fear public speaking because of the possibility of making mistakes, Sheen's approach is liberating. He showed that mistakes are not the enemy. They are an opportunity. A true speaker is not someone who never falters, but someone who knows how to turn faltering into a chance to connect more deeply with their audience. Fire and light, the symbiotic power of truth and passion. In the realm of public speaking, there are few metaphors more potent than the one Fulton Sheen used to describe the heart of a powerful speech: fire and light. According to Sheen, every effective speech must have these two essential elements working together. The light represents the truth, clarity of the message being conveyed, while the fire symbolizes the passion, the emotional intensity that drives the speaker and in turn ignites the audience. Why this comparison? Sheen understood that a speech without truth is hollow, lacking the substance to resonate with people's minds. But at the same time, truth alone is not enough. It must be delivered with fire, an inner conviction and passion that makes the audience feel the weight of what's being said. This blend of truth and passion is what allows a speech to transcend mere information delivery and become a transformative experience for the listener. Imagine sitting in a room, listening to someone speak about a topic they deeply believe in. Their words are not just accurate, they are alive, burning with the heat of their commitment. You can feel their energy, their belief, their urgency. That fire is contagious. When you hear a speaker who is truly passionate, it stirs something within you. You don't just understand their message intellectually, you feel it on an emotional and even visceral level. For Sheen, this was the secret to moving an audience. Fire and light are inseparable. If you have only one of these elements, the speech falters. Cold delivery of facts may enlighten the audience, but it won't inspire them. Likewise, a speech filled with raw emotion but lacking in solid truth may stir emotions, but will leave the audience without something substantial to hold on to. It's the balance of the two, clarity of truth and the intensity of passion, that gives a speech its power. This principle can be applied to every type of communication, not just public speaking. In our daily lives, when we wish to persuade or move others, we must first believe in the truth of our message. If we are not convinced ourselves, how can we expect anyone else to be? But beyond that, we must also convey that truth with passion. We must be on fire with the belief that what we are saying matters, not just to us, but to those we are speaking to. Fulton Sheen lived by this principle. When he spoke about his faith, it was clear that he wasn't just reciting doctrines or teaching from a detached intellectual standpoint. He was living what he preached. His speeches were imbued with an unmistakable zeal, fervor that made his audience sit up, take notice, and feel the same passion he felt. This is why Sheen's speeches were more than just sermons. They were moments of deep connection, where the audience didn't just listen, they experienced the truth he was sharing. Fire and light are the soul of any great speech. Without truth, there is no substance. Without passion, there is no movement. Fulton Sheen's mastery lay in his ability to balance both, creating speeches that were as enlightening as they were inspiring. He didn't just speak to the mind, he spoke to the heart. In doing so, he moved people in ways that few speakers ever do. For those of us striving to communicate effectively, Sheen's message is clear. Know your truth and burn with it. Let your passion be the vehicle that delivers that truth, and in doing so, you will not only inform your audience, you will transform them. Spiritual foundations, the divine power behind public speaking. For Fulton Sheen, public speaking was never merely a technical exercise. It was a spiritual vocation. At the core of his approach to oratory was the belief that true power in public speaking comes from a higher source. Sheen was a man of deep faith, and he understood that the ability to influence, to inspire, and to move an audience didn't just come from preparation or skill. It came from a divine connection, from spiritual discipline. In his eyes, the most effective communication was not only crafted with the mind, but was also deeply rooted in the soul. Sheen often spoke of the importance of prayer before delivering a speech. For him, prayer wasn't just a formality. It was the act of drawing strength, clarity, and inspiration from God. It was a way to align his message with a higher purpose and ensure that his words carried the weight of something greater than himself. Sheen believed that great orators don't just speak. They channel a message from above, and the humility to seek divine guidance was key to unlocking this power. Imagine for a moment that you are about to give a speech, standing before an eager audience, knowing that the words you speak may influence, guide, or even change the lives of those listening. For Sheen, the magnitude of that responsibility could only be approached with reverence and faith. He believed that to move hearts and minds, a speaker must first be grounded in something beyond personal ambition or intellect. The words must come from a place of deep truth, one that transcends the speaker's own limited perspective. Sheen famously referred to this connection as drawing from fires stolen from heaven. It's a powerful metaphor, suggesting that the greatest speeches, those that truly leave a lasting impact, are infused with divine fire. This fire, once stolen or borrowed from the divine, allows the speaker to communicate with an authority and passion that no amount of rehearsal or technical expertise can replicate. It is this divine inspiration that separates the merely competent speakers from the truly great one. The fire that burns in the heart of a speaker must be lit by something higher than themselves. And for Sheen, that source was God. In a world where public speaking is often treated as a skill to be mastered through techniques and strategies, Sheen's emphasis on the spiritual dimension offers a refreshing perspective. He reminds us that true oratory is about more than mastering the mechanics of communication. It's about speaking from the depths of one's soul, with a sense of purpose that transcends the self. It's about recognizing that our words have the power to heal, inspire, and transform, not because of our own abilities, but because we are conduits of something far greater. Sheen's speeches were not just performances, they were acts of spiritual service. His preparation involved more than research and practice. It involved prayer, reflection, and a deep sense of responsibility to the divine. When he spoke, he wasn't simply trying to convey information or persuade an audience. He was delivering a message that he believed was entrusted to him by God. And this gave his words a sense of gravity and power few others could match. For those of us who aspire to be effective communicators, Sheen's message is clear. Truly move an audience, we must first seek inspiration from a higher source. Whether it's through prayer, meditation, or quiet reflection, we must connect with the deeper truths that guide our lives. Only then can we speak with the kind of authority, passion, and sincerity that resonates with the hearts and minds of others. In conclusion, Sheen's approach to public speaking was not just about delivering a message, it was about embodying a message. His words were imbued with spiritual fire, and because of that, they had the power to light a fire in those who listened. For Sheen, greatest speeches were not just informative or entertaining. They were transformative because they were rooted in the divine.